Welcome to this PriorPark tutorial. In today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can install Visual Studio Code onto your computer. I'm going to show you how you can write some Python programs. Visual Studio Code is a program that lets you program in a wide variety of different languages, such as Python. To get started, we can go to our Start menu and we're going to search for Company Portal. If we click on Company Portal, it might ask you to sign in. If it does, just close the app and then reopen it. Under Featured Apps, we've got Visual Studio Code, a Microsoft application. You can click the Install button and you don't have to worry about putting a password in. It will install onto your computer. Once it's installed, it'll appear on your PLD's desktop screen. Double click on it to open it. This is Microsoft Visual Studio Code. You'll see a screen similar to mine. You see a Get Started tab at the top, which you can close, and you'll see a whole bunch of buttons on the side that you can use. Like with Microsoft Word or Microsoft Excel or PowerPoint, you also have a file, edit, and a whole bunch of different tools at the top. To get started, we first need to install Python as a language into the program. If not, it won't recognize it. To install Python, we're going to click on these little blocks over here, which is called the Extensions tab. In the Extensions tab, we're going to go to the search bar and we're going to search for Python. You're looking for the blue and yellow snake with a little tick saying that it's a Microsoft verified app. Once you click on it, click the Install button to start installing the app. Once it's finished installing, you can close it and we can get started with programming. To start, let's create a new file. We can do this by going to File and then clicking on New File. At the moment, we don't have a language to code in. First thing we need to do is we need to save it as a Python file. By default, this is going to be a text file. We don't want that. So to save it as a Python file, we're going to go to File, we're going to go to Save As, I'm going to give it a name. Let's call this My First Program. Now to save it as a Python file, we're going to add a .py at the end of our name. You must have a .py for it to be recognized as a Python file. Hit save when you've finished that. You'll know you've done it correctly because the tab name looks like a Python icon, and you'll see that over here as well. Let's start coding. Coding reads from top to bottom. In other words, when you run the program, it'll start on line 1, then on line 2, then it'll do line 3, and so on. So you have to remember that programming starts from the top and reads all the way to the bottom. Let's test this by writing out a command. One of the most popular commands we can use is the print command. This is also known as a subroutine, but I'll call it a command in this tutorial. The print command has 2 brackets after it, and inside the brackets we put what we want to output to our screen. In other words, what do we want to show the user? We're going to put these in speech marks and we're going to write in Hello World. Notice I don't have any capital letters for my print, and also notice we don't have any spacing between the T and the brackets. Now that I've written Hello World in speech marks and inside the brackets, let's see if it actually runs. I'll click on the Run button and then I'll click on Start Debugging. The shortcut for this is pressing F5. If this menu pops up, just click on the first one which says Python file. There we go. As you can see, my program has outputted Hello World. You can ignore all the text above it. Let's now look at a very good technique to use in Python, and that is variables. A variable is something that can store data, like Hello World for example, and it's also something that you can change throughout the program. This is useful when you want to have a piece of data, like your name, and you don't want to have to type your name out every single time in the program. Let's look at how we can create a variable. First things first, we need to give it a name. This can be any name you want, but you want to make sure it's always specific to what is being stored inside it. I'm going to store hello world. So let's write hello world. Notice there are no spaces between my word, and also notice I don't use speech marks when I write a variable name. Next, I need to use an assignment operator to tell the program what I want to store inside my hello world variable. Think of it like a box. The assignment operator is an equal sign. You'll know you've done it right when this turns blue. Next, I'm going to tell it what it needs to equal. In this case, it's going to equal hello world. You'll notice I keep writing hello world in speech marks. Anything in speech marks is called a string. A string is any text that includes letters, numbers, or symbols that is inside of speech marks. When you program, data has different types. We're going to look at two of them today, and one of them is a string. Let's output this word. I'll write print, open my brackets, and I'm going to write the variable name without speech marks inside it. What my program is now going to do is it's going to look up what is inside hello world. In this case, what's inside hello world is the string hello world. So this is what we should see outputted to my screen. Let's hit run and let's click start debugging again. There we go. It's outputted again. So notice how you can store stuff in variables to use as many times as you want. Now we talked about strings and we talked about how variables can be changed. Let's now do hello world again and let's make it equal something else. Let's write goodbye for now. And below that I'm going to print hello world again. Let's run our program. As you can see, programming reads from top to bottom. It stores hello world inside of this variable called hello world. It prints hello world. It then changes what's stored in hello world to goodbye for now. And then because this is underneath where we changed it, it now outputs goodbye for now. Programming reads like a recipe book, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. Let's now create a very simple calculator program. To do this, we're going to create two variables, number 1 and number 2. Let's call it number 1 and let's call it number 2. Now let's make it equal a number. I will put 10 here and I will put 5 over here. This is a different data type. If I put this in speech marks, it would be a string. But it's not in speech marks. That means it's something else. When a number is not in speech marks, it's called an integer. An integer is any whole number that could either be positive or negative. Let's now go and print number 1 plus number 2. This should add whatever is stored inside number 1, in this case it's 10, and it will add it to whatever's stored in number 2, in this case it's 5. Let's run our program and we should see it output 20. Sorry, 15. And there we go. Let's see what happens if I do the same thing, but I put both of them in speech marks. These are two strings now, they're not integers. If I click start debugging again, you'll see it puts the numbers next to each other. 10 and 5. So when you add strings together, it puts them next to each other. When you add integers together, it actually adds them. This is why there are different data types. Now what if the user wanted to enter a number? Let's write a program to do that. First, I will print out enter a number. Second, I'm going to get a variable. Let's call this my number. I'm going to make it equal the user input. Now to do user input, what we're going to do is we're going to write input and 2 brackets. This is another command or subroutine that will ask the user to enter something and press enter. Let's add a number here. We'll call this number 2 and make that equal 10. And now let's print my number plus number 2. This will ask us to enter a number. It'll store whatever the user has entered into a variable called my number. It'll make 10 assigned to number 2, and then it will add them together. Let's see what happens. If I enter a number 10 inside my terminal, in my output, and I press enter, I get an error. The error is because input is known as a string, and you can't add a string with an integer like this. So in order to put these together, what we can do is we can convert input into an integer. This is another command we can use. To do that, we're going to type in int, and we're going to put the input inside the int command. You'll notice I've got these brackets inside bigger brackets, and that's fine. Now what will happen is it'll ask you to input something, it'll store it inside my number as an integer instead of a string, and now it should work fine. I'll enter the number 10 again, and 10 plus 10 is 20. Let's make this look a little bit nicer. To make it look a little bit nicer, let's store the answer inside a variable called answer, instead of putting it inside the print. You can actually add numbers together and store them in a variable. And then let's output a string. Your answer is plus whatever the answer is. Let's see what happens. If I click run, and I click start debugging, and I enter the number 10 again, in the right place, I get an error because your answer is a string, and answer is an integer. So to fix this, let's convert this addition into a string so that we can join them together. To do that, instead of int, we're going to use str. Str does the same thing as the int does, but instead of converting it to an integer, we're going to convert it to a string. Let's run our program again. I'll enter the number 10, and I get the correct answer. First, it adds the numbers together, it then converts it to a string and stores it inside answer, and then it correctly joins the 2 strings together. Remember that answer is now a string, and we get your answer is 20. This is a bit of insight in how you can code in Python. I hope you have found this helpful.